Our next guest is a crisis PR veteran. We're going to get his response to the California wildfires, plus share his unique insights on the White House's unusual alliances throughout U.S. history. Joining us right now is Eric Dezenhall. He is the chairman of Dezenhall Resources. He stepped away from his day-to-day duties at his company. He's got a new book that's out this week. It's called Wise Guys and the White House: Gangsters, Presidents, and the Deals They Made. And we'll tease it for now, just to say that you go back through lots of administrations, and this is not just a history book. You're looking at current administrations, too, and we're going to talk about that in just a second. But why don't we start with what's happening with the California wildfires? Already we are seeing the blame game taking place. What happened? What went wrong? How was this allowed to get so bad? Was the state and the city, were they prepared for what's happened here?
I remember years ago there was an L.A. earthquake, and I was watching the news coverage, and a reporter, went up to a town manager and said, "What went wrong here?" And I thought, well, the earth moved. And so what's happening now is the only thing that matters in this news cycle is blame. That is the only thing people are going to want to talk about. Nobody wants to talk about solutions. It's all about blame. The mayor really cannot recover from something like this.
She was out of the country.
She's out of the country in Ghana.
She slashed the fire department's budget.
Well,
by
right.
millions of dollars.
And I think that when you are a mayor, when you're somebody in this situation, the whole idea in politics is it's all about accepting credit for things you didn't accomplish and taking the blame for things you didn't cause. She is going to take all the blame. There's nothing that can be done about it. The one that's more interesting to me, because it's more survivable, is Gavin Newsom, because he wants to have a future. And what is going to be imperative for him is what the public, if he wants to run for office, is going to need to look at is how well he takes your beating. One of the things that voters are very interested in, they want to see how well you take it. And whether you can endure taking it. And second, what he's going to have to worry about is bringing money to the state. That's really the focus. In terms of what the mayor can do, that is beyond anything I can possibly comprehend.
What are Gavin Newsom's odds of success at bringing money to the state? Already you've had the House Speaker, Mike Johnson, suggest that there should be conditions to any aid that comes along. And clearly this incoming administration is not friendly with Gavin Newsom and vice versa. No,
I don't think that the odds are great, but that at least he has odds. The mayor has no odds. There is no play there for her. For him, if he can get something to the state, it could work. The problem he's going to have is he's going to have tension between wanting to rebuild and environmentalists, who are his big constituency, who don't want to rebuild. And so it is an absolutely fraught situation, and you have somebody who wants to be president who external circumstances are really going to determine it more than anything he does.
You think he's going to be looking at the rebuilding process and saying maybe we don't do it as much because the environmentalists helped put him in the position he's in?
I think that that's a tension he's going to have to deal with. The problem is, how do you tell people who have lost their homes, well, we may not rebuild? I don't see how there's a win there. I mean, there's no option for them other than to rebuild. You can't just say, well, just move somewhere else. That's a little bit glib, and that's going to be a problem he can't dig out of.
More than a little glib, I think.
Yeah.
And then there are the questions that come back to why the reservoir there was empty, why the fire hydrants were empty. He's called for an investigation. How much patience will there be with that playing out, just given the acrimony that's already built up?
Well, that's right. And no matter how much a client under attack wants to get out of the blame situation, I have seen no matter what chess move they make, it always comes back to who takes the fall. And that is going to be the news cycle we are going to be in for a very, very long time.
How do you think of the contrast between what Gavin Newsom is doing right now and between what the governor of Florida, DeSantis, had done when hurricanes have devastated his state? Because you can look at this and say, okay, there are natural disasters, acts of God, things we can't control, but there are human responses to these things.
And the
response has been pretty different.
I think that there's been greater competence in Florida. I think that they're more used to it. And I also think that you have a leader there who, while controversial, is very, very camera ready in the sense that he looks like somebody who is in absolute command. I never really understood why George Bush got in so much trouble over Katrina, because there was really only so much you can do in a natural situation like that. But unfortunately, what the story becomes is the handling. It is always about the handling.
They didn't handle it. It was a vacuum. It was a vacuum, and they didn't address it. And if you let, the chips fall where they're going to fall, it's exactly what happened to poor W back then. And probably should have never come out and said that Brownie's doing a heck of a job.
There's no question.
They mishandled the whole thing. But you're right.
But I think it's still a hurricane.
Exactly.
And you're still dealing with an act of God. There's a reason why force majeure clauses exist, because you're dealing with somebody beyond control. That's why I still find it humorous when I think of the reporter asking the town official in L.A. in 1994 what went wrong here. The tectonic plates moved.
Right. Let's talk about your new book, Wise Guys and the White House. When I first got wind of it, I thought it was going to be looking back at a lot of historic administrations that we've kind of known around the edges, whether that's FDR, whether that's JFK, some associations with the mobsters and things that they had done along the way. I think what's most interesting about this is you take this right up to the Biden and Trump administrations, that this is something that's still active today. What's the relationship between
absolutely.
Organized crime and power?
Well, one of the cliches we always hear in Washington, it's not the crime, it's the cover-up. It turns out the cover-up works really well. And one of the things, they're cover-ups. And one of the things I've seen in the history from Roosevelt down to Biden is covering up organized crime connections actually has worked very well. My favorite Biden example is when he was running for Senate in 1972. He was behind. He was a kid. He was 29 years old. He had a serious opponent that was supposedly going to beat him, an incumbent. And the Teamsters, which were controlled by the Bruno family in Philadelphia, made sure that the attack ads that were going to hit Biden on election eve, the newspapers weren't picked up and delivered. The Teamsters made sure of it. So that's my favorite Biden anecdote. What's interesting about Trump is Trump drives people crazy when he says, when he's accused of something naughty, he says, that just makes me smart. He's actually right. Because if you look at how he dealt with organized crime, he did it in a way that was right on the line. Nobody can provably show that it was illegal. And to be specific about it, if you picture in Manhattan...
You're talking about in buildings.
In buildings. And you picture a building being built, you picture steel. Trump didn't use steel in Trump Tower. He used concrete. Steel is an international industry. Concrete is controlled locally. It was controlled by the Genovese, Gambino, and Colombo families. He simply gave them a good concrete contract. That took care of labor problems. And a detractor would say, yes, but if he got something in return that's illegal. My response is, it's been 45 years. Nobody has ever proven everything. And so when Donald Trump says that makes me smart, as much as people cringe, it's actually kind of true.